7 o'clock, and so it's time for us to get started. We are recording. I want to welcome everybody to the Heritage Museum History Talks, Lives Well Lived series, presented in partnership with Vashon Community Care. And remind you that your microphone is muted for this talk. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat function, and we will answer questions at the end of the presentation. I'd like to recognize and thank For Culture for sponsoring our museum talk series. I'm Elsa Kroonquist, Executive Director of the Heritage Museum. And as is our tradition, we open our talks with recognition of Native people. At this time, I'd like to introduce Chris Austin, Vashon Heritage Museum board member, to read the First People recognition. Chris?
Thank you, Elsa. We acknowledge and recognize on the ancestral land and traditional home of the Shababs Coast Salish Native people, the first people of Vashon Island. This land was their home long before Euro-American voyagers and settlers came, and they were forcibly removed from these lands and relocated onto neighboring reservations, including Puyallup, Nisqually, Squaxin Island, and Muckleshoot. Vashon Island is their traditional home, and their historical relationship with the land continues today. We honor the island itself and the Shababs people, past and present.
Thank you, Chris. And with that same intent, we state, Black Lives Matter. The Vashon Maury Island Heritage Museum rejects racism, discrimination, and hate. Our purpose is to honor stories of love, oppression, action, and resilience. Stories that give voice to all, examine hard questions about social, economic, and environmental justice, and reveal racism and oppression within our heritage. We pledge that everything we do will honor the island's diversity of cultures and histories. And we'd like to invite you to join us for our next talk in August, when Jean Cameron Findley, retired teacher and a Vashon Heritage Museum board member emeritus and chair of the Education Committee and co-author of Images of America, Mosquito Fleet of South Puget Sound, will join us to talk about stories of our mosquito fleet. And then in September, we'll hear about The Gift, the Vashon High School cherry trees. Then I'd also like to invite everyone to this weekend on July 10th. We're going to start, we'd like to invite you to join us at 8 p.m. for the opening of the exterior portion of our new exhibit, Natural Wonder, an island shaped by water. The opening ceremonies will be the presentation of the whale people, protectors of the sea, and the blessing of the Red Road totem before it makes its journey across the United States to be presented at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And now I'd like to introduce Ann Atwell, Director of Development at Vashon Community Care, to talk about coming events at the VCC and introduce our presentation and our moderator for the evening.
Thank you, Elsa. Well, I first want to tell you about some things happening at Vashon Community Care on September 9th, the same day that the Heritage Museum will be having their museum talk about the VHS cherry trees. We will be having a donor event from 5 to 7 p.m. on the property. It promises to be a really fun evening or afternoon, late afternoon event. We'll be touring people around the property to see some of the changes made and the good things happening at VCC. And you'll be hearing more about that. And it goes till 7 o'clock, so you still can catch the museum talk. On October 14th, we'll have our next Lives Well Lived talk about the heroes of the Vashon emergency operations. So we look forward to seeing you for that as well. And I also wanted to note the VCC is recruiting for all kinds of summer jobs. So please go to our website if you know of any young people in particular who are looking for jobs in the dining room or who are might be interested in caregiving. We do offer training for CNA, up and coming CNAs. So you can go to VashonCommunityCare.org and click on job opportunities. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to welcome you to our second Lives Well Lived talk, Strawberry Festival Luminaries, Two Women Who Shaped Vashon. And it is such an honor to have these incredible women talking with us tonight. Susan McCabe will be our moderator. A little bit about Susan. Susan abandoned corporate life in Chicago to move to Vashon and wallow in the arts, theater, literature, radio, and TV. Since landing here, she's established Shakespeare in the Park, written and performed a one-woman show and comedy sketches with island variety show Church of Great Rain. She produced and stage managed drama docs Into the Woods and Kat Eggleston's Cyclone Line. For 5 years, she managed Voice of Vashon's radio and TV station and continues to host her own weekly talk show, Real Talk. And with that, I will give you Susan McCabe.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much. And welcome, everybody. This is going to be so much fun this evening. Tonight, we are going to hear some great stories from and about two Vashon Island iconic women who have enriched and expanded our community with their very presence and with their styles. They are Bettie Edwards and Melinda Powers. We're going to start with Bettie this evening. Bettie, a native of Eugene, Oregon, began her career as a secretary with the Northwest Natural Gas. She transferred to Portland in 1967 and took a marketing role with them, demonstrating gas usage, conservation, and cooking, speaking in schools, and writing 5 cookbooks, including Barbecuing Can Be a Gas. Her first youth mentoring opportunity was as an advisor for junior achievement on behalf of the gas company. And after moving to Vashon in the early 70s, she started working as a Sally Brown, we'll find out what that is, at Nordstrom, working her way up to corporate fashion director in 2 years because of her ability to connect with people. After leaving Nordstrom, Bettie purchased the Little House, now the Sugar Shack, from Jean Peck. For 2 decades, the Little House was a hub for island youth during their most formative years, employing island teens and providing magical memories for children. The Little House received many national accolades and awards for advertising and promotion, including a Gifts and Decorators Gold Award. Bettie was also a frequent speaker around the country for buying markets. Bettie's community service has focused on Vashon youth and seniors. She dedicated her time as a past 2-term VCC board member and volunteered with the VCC Dinner Club for 10 consecutive years. In 2013, she was elected Strawberry Festival Grand Marshal, and in 2017, Unofficial Mayor of Vashon, raising $10,000 in votes to benefit community care. She is a recipient of the Outstanding Businessperson Award from the Vashon Grange, the Outstanding Woman of the Year from the Vashon Seroptimists, and is a Rotary Paul Harris Fellow. She was vice president of the Vashon Business Association, now the Vashon Chamber of Commerce, for 2 years. Welcome, Bettie. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me here. It's going to be fun and it's a great honor.
We have the next slide, Chris. There you are with your parents and your heroic brother. I want to ask you, what is the one lesson you feel you got from your family that has most powerfully shaped the adult Bettie and supported you through your life?
Well, you're going to hear the word probably several times from me, the word team. I mean, my family was a team. My brother was my hero. He was 9 years older than I was, but he was part of the team. It wasn't like a secondary family. And, you know, he was my hero football player, and he encouraged me to be part of the team. And I think he was one who encouraged me to go on and become a cheerleader, which I did. And it's been one of those. My mother was recreational director. There was always teamwork involved in what she was doing. It's funny, I grew up across the street from a baseball park with lights, and I lived next door to the Harbor School with lights on it too. So we just were a team. We would sit down and talk things over. And you'll notice in that one picture, the ringlet in the middle of my forehead, my mother used to say, There once was a girl who had a curl right in the middle of her forehead. And when she was good, she was very, very good. And when she was bad, she was horrid. And I knew that that meant, if she started that, I knew that that meant, that was my discipline. Or if she called me Betty Marie. So I would say the word team player.
Team player. That's what you took away with us.
Yeah.
Next slide, Chris. Next slide.
Pardon me?
There we go. Gas company. What was your specific role, and where was the gas company? Was in Portland?
Yes, I started in Eugene, Oregon, and I transferred to Portland, where I took on a marketing position with the company. And I had a boss who today I always refer to as my boss. And his name was John Graham, and he was everything to me, absolutely everything to me. He believed in me, and he believed in team again. The one picture is of me. That was probably my first connection with youth. They encouraged me, and I was an advisor for the junior treatment program for 2 years. The other one was the barbecuing can be a gas. And when we say cookbooks, they were small, 6, 8, 10 page type things, promotional type things. One was on the lamb, and I did it for the Lamb Association of Oregon. Never had eaten lamb in my life, but we pulled it off. And the third picture is a picture of community service, in which I cooked a turkey every day in November, and I never wanted to cook another turkey when it was done. And it was for the Catholic Association for the Homeless way back then. That was in the 60s, and that was what we did. It was just, he challenged me. He believed in me, and I would say, Donnie, I don't know anything about that. And he would say, well, you better learn. To the point that at one point in our demonstration kitchens, we actually did a very rewarding program for cerebral palsy people. It was very rewarding. And we learned how to make props that they could use for cooking. I went into their homes and talked to them about how they could refine their kitchens. He was a pusher, and he is still my boss.
Which one of the people in that photo is he?
He's not in that picture. Those are my other two junior achievement advisors with me.
That was when you're doing junior achievement.
Yes.
So were you teaching the folks in junior achievement about business?
Yes, that was a business related program. That's what that whole program is. It's a business related program. And we did it from the gas company. We sponsored it for 2 years. So it was a great experience. It was something I had never been exposed to. So it was fun. The best part of that whole thing was probably the barbecuing, the promotions. You won't believe it, but I actually lived on the state fairgrounds in a trailer for 10 days. Yeah, I did. I was part of it. And one of the nicest compliments is the mop salesman came to me and asked me if I should ever thought about doing this circuit, because I was so good. I cracked up. That's one of my compliments that has remained with me in my life. I should have joined the circuit, the fair route, and then sold mops. I didn't. I'm glad.
That was the demonstration circuit.
Yeah, well, that's, they go from fair to fair to fair, the mop salesmen and the Cuisinart people. I mean, they weren't Cuisinarts, but the mixers and the funny things they sell. And he watched me demonstrate the whole time I was down there for 10 days. And he thought I had a knack and that I could sell a lot of mops. And he told me he lived 6 months on the beach in Miami, and the other 6 months he did the circuit. I don't know, but I didn't take the job offer.
That sounds like a come on to me. What job did you have when you actually left the gas company? What were you promoted in your tenure there?
Yes, well, when I moved from Eugene, I went into marketing. Prior to that, I had a secretarial position. So I went to Portland and moved into the marketing department. Actually, I didn't apply for the job. They came to me and asked me if I would like the job, which was a compliment. And I think that was because I had done a bunch of volunteering with the marketing department in Eugene. Like I said, it was one of those where they threw out a suggestion. And like I say, he'd say, you can do it, learn how to do it, figure it out. It's yours. I mean, from speaking at conferences for the Pacific Northwest Gas Association, we put together a slide program way back then, a little, like a video presentation on, the theme was getting to know you. So it's all set to music. And it was for going into the schools and teaching conservation and gas usage in the schools.
I like the conservation idea, but let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
And this is when you worked at Nordstrom, and you were here in Seattle, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, this looks like high fashion shenanigans. What was your job at Nordstrom?
Well, when I started out, you asked about the Sally Brown. I kind of started doing some part-time work in the display department through a friend here that lived on the island I'd met. And then Sally Brown was like a personal shopper, and Nordstrom was a really big part of, I mean, they really pushed that program. And I happened to work an Italian promotion that they did. They used to do big Italian English type of promotions. And I worked a promotion that night. And believe it or not, I got a phone call like a week later while I was down visiting my father, and who was quite ill. And they asked me if I would come back and interview for a position in the fashion office. And I said, that's not really me, Sherry. You know, I'm the one who calls and says, I want 4 pair of black pants. I want 3 shirts. I want this. And I would go in and try them on. But I took the bait and I drove back and I went in, and they gave me a pass to put together 5 outfits. And I walked the store and pulled these 5 outfits and came back and explained to them why I pulled them and how I accessorized them, etc. And her comment to me was, you don't have the fashion experience, but you know how to put the parsley on the plate from the gas company. Therefore, we can teach you how to put the scarf on the body. So I moved into the fashion office as an assistant. And 3 years later, I took a full season, fall, winter, spring, summer, into being corporate director. And we ran all the fashion shows, from hiring the models to pulling the music scales to building octagon cubes in the middle of a runway that the models would change inside of. We did a show at the Laserium, which was really fun. And I think one of the favorite crazies was the show on the Kingdom floor. Ilsley Nordstrom was raising money for the Alumni Association. And so there was a private showing on the Kingdom floor because, if you remember, the Nordstroms had purchased the Seahawks. So it was an exciting period of time. Again, a challenge there that pushed me way out was to do a show for the blind. How do you do a fashion show for the blind when they can't see? Yeah. And out of that came wonderful conversations about, don't ask the person that's with me what I like, because at one time I could see, and I know what red is and orange is, etc. So talking to them about fabric and letting them feel the fabric, it was a challenge again. And again, that's real teamwork. When you're working with that many people to do sound and settings, etc., and learning laser information, yeah, fun and a very exciting challenge. But I decided that it was a little pressure, and I didn't really wear blue jeans at that period of time. So I put my blue jeans back on and came back to the island.
How long did you work for Nordstrom?
3 years.
That's good. So I'm hearing that you obviously attracted a lot of attention because of your personality. And I hear also a lot of personal confidence and willingness to try anything. Would that be an accurate description?
Well, thank you. First of all, that's a nice compliment. Yeah, I think so. I think that it's a challenge is a challenge, and a challenge takes team, and a challenge takes new learning experiences. So yeah, I think that would be a motivation. And I think that goes way back to my parents. Don't be afraid to try something, you know.
Let me ask you this. Nordstrom has a reputation for treating employees well and for focusing on customer service. What was your takeaway from working there?
Customer service is ultimate, and that was with the gas company too. Customer service is something that was inbred to every employee, and it was teamwork. It was, I think that's a very fair description of Nordstrom's, and I think they have probably continued. Being in the position I was in, as we called them, the boys were in the office almost every single day. And because we were all on the same floor together, and they sat down and they critiqued fashion shows, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, I think that's a fair description of it. Yeah, that sums it up quite well.
How would you where would you put Nordstrom, your Nordstrom experience in the continuum of your development as a business person?
Well, I think that was the final stretch that said, you can do anything. I mean, seriously, because I did not have a fashion background, and I ended up, as I said, pulled music scores, did set design, did everything, not myself alone, but with a team, with other people doing those things I didn't know about. I did learn to put the scarf on the body, like I did the parsley on the plate, which the other Don Graham, or the Don Graham, had taught me to do. So yeah, there's that. I think it was a very savvy learning experience.
Let's go to the next slide and your next adventure. Cooking school? We are learning all kinds of interesting things about you, Betty. When and where did you do cooking school?
Well, it was the little house, and that was, again, okay, I'll go back just a little bit. When I first bought the store, and there's a picture of that coming up. When I first bought the store, I bought it in July through a recommendation of Cord Harmson Spreckle, who was an island resident. I had known him at Nordstrom, and they had come to he and his wife Jane had come to Easter dinner. And he said to me, "What are you going to do now that you left?" And I said, "Cord, I have no idea." And he said, "Why don't you buy the little house?" And truthfully, because I've been commuting so much, my answer was, "What's the little house?" And we talked about it. And I went to Jean, and we talked about it. I bought it in July. I went to one market with her. I had none buying experience, nothing. So we went through Christmas with her, and what she wanted to do. And I bought it in January. I took over in January. I was on a ski trip and writing my first newsletter. And when I came back in January, there was nobody in the store. It was empty because it was January and everybody spent all their money. And I decided, whoa, they don't like me, so we better do something that would make it fun. So we did some things. We did a little remodeling, some changing of some merchandise. And I said, let's do cooking schools, because my background at the gas company had been cooking. So we did a cooking school, and you'll laugh because I look at that first graduating cooking class.
Yeah.
Those kids on that float, that was one of our floats, was probably, those kids now have grandchildren older than that. So that was a long time ago. We bought the little house in 1976. So that was one of our first adventures, was to do children's cooking classes. And we had aprons made for them, and they stood up on little benches. And you probably won't recognize that room. That was what became the toy room. But for a period of time, that was our cooking school type of thing, basically for children. But we had guest chefs in. That's when we brought in the wine into the store. We had a lot of food product in the store. Kind of like if you look at now, how many little places have food that didn't have food before, little mini grocery stores. That's kind of what we started. Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide and take a look at the little house. And there it is. Now, what vintage are these photos? What years are we looking at here?
Well, that was when I first bought it. I love the yellow awning, and I always wanted to return it, but I never did. It was gray. And there's my yellow Volkswagen convertible, which I'm now driving a white one in front. So that was 1976. Yeah. And then we painted it red because I wanted a brighter color to stand out. Gray seemed depressing to me in the winter. And you notice there's no walkway or the wooden steps going up to it. And then we painted it red. And the next step was when I hired Aaron Burby, who was in college, and he painted it the yellow. And that's the final shot on the left, is just before I sold the store. So we did a lot of outdoor exterior changes, but it was 1976. And that float that's there, we did a float every year, which was really fun. But we had some issues. Again, talk about team. Boy, that stuff doesn't happen alone. And the little house, before I go back to the float, I have to tell you, I had the best staff. I had the best managers. I go back to the first one was Shelley, and then there was Joan, and then there was Pat, and just went down the line. We went to markets together. Everything we did. When my junior staffers came in to work for me, I took them to market. made sure that they bought a product, then they had to figure out how to display it, et cetera, et cetera. So, that was, and I said they always covered my tail. I always had somebody who could write, because you can't read my writing, it's very loopy. I had somebody who could reach everything, Christina with very long arms. We just had people to do those things. And we had 3, so to say, mottos. One was always smile before you answer the phone. There's customer service. Number 2 is when there's time for leaning, there's time for cleaning. And there were a lot of, so to say, tiny little toys that were dust collectors that were great. And the third one was kind of never being out of the donkey. I'm going to go blank. And oh, come on.
Well, let's go
Yes.
to
Yeah.
a little more about your management philosophy and your marketing of the Little House. First of all, what was your initial concept for the Little House, and how did that evolve over time? And how did the folks that worked with you influence the evolution of the Little House?
My original philosophy was I didn't know, because I didn't have any buying experience. I didn't have anything. What was I going to do? So then it was looking for something fun to do, something that brought people in, something that involved a lot of people. And my staff was always part of the planning. I very rarely made a move without asking them what they thought, how they could be involved, or what it was like taking the juniors to market, exposing them to that type of things. I don't think I really ever hired somebody without saying to them, what do you think if we hired this person? We had lots of meetings, lots of brainstorming. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? It wasn't just, this is my idea and this is what we're going to do. It didn't work that way. It just, sometimes I probably did that, but not very many times. It was kind of a community. I think that ours was making people happy. I used to always say, I potty trained a lot of kids on the island by gummy bears and stickers. My high school staff would say I taught them all how to tie bows, but it was always an involvement story like that. What could we do that would be fun? What we could do that would solve something that wasn't there? That what was missing on this island? What didn't we have? Well, at that point, they didn't have a big candy section like in the grocery stores now. So we brought in candy. We brought in gourmet foods. Toys were just very small department in the pharmacy. So we expanded and did a lot with toys. We did crazy makeup days for silly Saturdays, as we called them. We sold tiaras. It's just all the things that were feel goods. And part of that came through the Kirshner children, who did a Christmas card one year. And in that Christmas card, it was little Kaylee looking up at Kimmy, and the card read, "Through the eyes of a child." And that, I think, was what became my philosophy for the store. Through the eyes of a child. If we could all see things that way, we'd all have a lot more smiles and a lot more giggles and not as much judgmental.
Well, clearly that worked. Was there a point at which you realized you had created a community gathering place, and was that intentional?
I don't ever think I looked at it as a gathering place. I looked at it as a happening. I don't know, gathering would be my word. It was just a happening place. It made people feel good when they came in. We called it a feel-good store because you could buy something at that point, you could buy something for little tiny toys for 25 cents. You could buy jawbreakers. Jawbreakers were a huge seller, but it was a big feel-good. You could buy a small bar of soap for somebody. You didn't have to have an expensive gift. It was just a different thing. So the marketing was, and the development of the store was what made us all feel good. What could we do that would make other people feel good? What would we do in join? And the Little House did a lot of those things. And there's a couple other slides that will show that. When you ask about some of the favorites, I don't know what they were. I can give you some, but yeah.
Feel good. Let's go to the next one, because that made a lot of people feel really good. And I didn't know until I spoke with you, or until we came to this show, that you originated it. So tell us about the Malt Shop. It really got popular under your development.
Well, we were coming home from a ski trip at Crystal Mountain one weekend, and Bugsy's was a great little shop, had just moved out of there to the main plaza over by Thriftway. And the building was empty. And it was kind of like, I wonder what'll go in there. What do we need again? What does the island need? So it came down to, at that point, Dairy Queen didn't have any sit down area inside of it. It was a small building on the main street, and it closed early. And we said, let's do a malt shop. That was it. It was coming down from a ski trip on an early morning because we'd drive back at like 5:30, 6 o'clock to get the kids into school. And so we opened a malt shop, and that famous boss, my boss, Don Graham, brought up all the equipment from Portland, Oregon. He brought up 3 tents. He brought up barbecues. He brought up chairs, tables. We did a grand opening like I don't think the island had seen. We did a crazy. We did a malt shop black tie party, Vashon style, and everybody wore crazy ties. And the winner was Bruce Kirshner, who wore an actual hamburger for his tie. I mean, we had 3D ties like ice cream cones. Since it was aimed at the kids to have a place to come, Ken Wilson was a music director at that period of time, and he brought up his jazz choir, and they opened with singing and a little concert in the parking lot. We took over the Kimmel's parking lot. It was great. It was just a crazy fun thing. We owned it only about 8 months, and somebody came along and made us an offer, like I said. And it was the first deli, because at that point, the grocery stores did not have delicatessens in them. And we sold meat, cheese by the slice. You could create your own hamburger, whatever you wanted on it. There were like 8 different kinds of meat and cheeses in the shop. So you could just create what you wanted by special order. And then we had potato salad, coleslaw, et cetera, et cetera. So we were trying to fill a gap, again, based on what we didn't have on the island and what would satisfy the kids. And the kids did. After several concerts at the high school, they would come up afterwards and we would open up for them. And just so they could come in and have a place to hang out and listen to the recordings for the night. We did that several times in that 8 months. So, you know, we did a malt shop parade, you know, not a parade, but we were in the malt shop as a float again for the parade.
So who took it over from you after that 8-month grand opening? And they continue as a malt shop?
Yes, it never changed its name. It never, through everything, it never changed its name. So as I said, there were, I think, 3 for sure, maybe 4 owners after that. Mm-hmm. And they all developed it into what they needed to do or changed it the way they needed to do. The little deli part didn't last as long as what we had hoped it would have, but all of them had, it's just like with the Sugar Shack now, she's doing her own thing. It's a building and you create the energy inside of the building. And that's, I believe that's what we did. We created a tremendous energy.
You did. Let's go to more of your energy. Thank you, Chris. Here's the Soapbox Derby. So when did that happen? How long did it last? And what was your role in that?
Oh, I love it. This was one where my mother, being park director, Soapbox Derby was big. And she decided we needed a Soapbox Derby in Eugene, Oregon. And so they ran it down the hill I lived at the bottom of. And somehow I just remember all the excitement and the fun. No, I never did race a car. My brother was older, so no, he didn't. And again, it was just a conversation. What can we do? Let's do a Soapbox Derby. And that's how it started. And those pictures show, go ahead, Susan, you had a question.
Was it an organization? Was it a
national soapbox? Yeah, it's a national soapbox race derby. You had qualifications, etc. We didn't, but we did buy their wheels and we bought different things that would qualify for that. So we ran it. I think it's 108th. Isn't that terrible? We're on 100. They think it's 108th. They don't remember. That one picture on the left was something that will never happen again just because of security. Those were the kids that were weighing in on the US Post Office scales. And it was hysterical. They had to bring their car up. It had to be in a certain weight to be in a certain category. You couldn't have any moving loose parts on it. So if anything happened, it's just there's the Shady Lady car, which was owned by Dusty Burby, run by her older son, Jason. It's Jason Burby standing there. I don't recognize the others. That's Aaron Burby, his brother, standing in the first Little House car. When I first saw that car, I panicked because it was rebar steering on the outside. Yeah, we came a long ways, baby. They ended up being fiberglass cars, very high speed. The Bianchi boys all drove them, the Hansons. It just was really fun. We did a little reunion about 2 years before I sold the little house, and we did a Soapbox Derby in the back reunion. And I think we had like 5 cars that were still in existence. So I think we personally, DS and I, Dan and I, personally ran it, I think like, I'm going to say 5 years, and then it was taken over by other people and they ran it for several years after that.
And
So I'm going to say I don't know what year that was, but I think it ended in probably, our part of it probably ended in like 88, 89, 90. Yeah. I don't know, somewhere in that area. My dates are confused. Sorry, I didn't really look them up. Sorry, I can't tell you. But they walked in the parade. They ran all the cars down Soapbox in the festival parade, and people dressed up as soapboxes, bold, tied, et cetera, and led them out. It was a family event that was father, son, father, daughter, ever built the cars together. And as you can see, there was every shape and size.
Certainly was. And gosh, I wish we were still doing that. Let's go to the next slide.
No, you don't. It was nerve-wracking at that point. We flipped one girl, they took her off in a neck brace, and she still lives on the island, and she's healthy and she's happy and all is good, but it was a little nerve-wracking. Okay, this is the Santa's Cottage. And I guess if I had to name favorites of things we had done, this of course still rings true to my heart. This was the cottages on the right, which we built. It was built and constructed down at the Holly Farm originally. And when they sold that property, we had to move it uptown and got permission from US Bank to set it on their property, where it still sits today. And it is still visited by children at holiday. We read children's stories to the preschool. They read to me, which is really fun. There are several people. Angie, my manager for years, has read and read and read in there. So we created it. The magic of that little house has the chair from Frederick and Nelson, which Donna Kellum, who used to own Frame of Mine, found when she was at a display sale for the store. And on the bottom of that chair, it says Frederick and Nelson, first floor, main store. So if parents were to look at their pictures that were taken, they would see it's the same exact chair they had their pictures taken in. The other one is a picture of Santa's breakfast, which we did for years. This one happens to be at the old Steen Estate House, in which Santa was asleep in a bed and awakened by the fairy sugar plum dancers, Marta Langland, and she gave him a kiss on the cheek and sprinkled fairy dust on him, and he woke up and he sat on the edge of his bed and talked to children. The third one is our famous Dasher. Dasher had appeared, was made by Janice, the woman whose picture is in front of the World Trade Center, so that gives you a date. And we went back for one of the national awards that we received in New York. And she put the costume on, and we went to the Today Show early in the morning. Did not get on. They didn't want to talk to the they didn't want to talk to the moose. But anyway, he's our reindeer. He has a song written about him. He's been everywhere. He appeared the first time at Chautauqua grade school when my grandchildren were in grade school. And David Prowse asked to wear the costume to surprise the children in Pam Hallman's classes. And then when the kids finally put it all together, they wanted to grow big enough to wear it. And they have worn that suit for many, many, many years and led in the parade. It's been fun.
Thank you. And I know it continues. You've made lots and lots of magic, Bettie Edwards. Let's go to the next slide, Chris. So your appointment to Grand Marshal in the 2013 Strawberry Festival Parade was the community's recognition of your contributions to the Vashon community. How did you feel about that? And how did you feel about sharing the stage with Susan Hansen, who was then VHS principal?
Well, that was part of it. It was Susan and I together, which was a good team. You know why? Because it was all for the love of the children. And it was. Both of us were child oriented. Both of us cared about the kids and what we could do and tried to do the best we could to give them new opportunities. So it was quite an honor to co-share it. That position is, I don't know how you'd say, rewarded to people who people write letters about and send letters in, and then a committee selects those people. I have a room that has things all over it. And one of them is a poster that the kids made that they all signed, that they signed at the baseball games to put my name on this, on the thing. And that was a big honor, huge honor, huge honor.
Well deserved. Bettie Edwards, among so many achievements. I suspect you may be most proud of the young people to whom you've taught and entrepreneurship and ethical business practices. Would that be a good guess?
Yeah, ethical, I think we were. I don't think there was any question. And I think, I don't know, it was a nice wrap. That and the mayor's contest, those were nice wraps. There was a nice closing down to deciding to retire.
And boy, you certainly earned that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and for all you've done for our community. Stay with us. We're going to have questions from the audience for you after we talk with Melinda.
Great. Thank you again.
Now we are ready to talk with Melinda Powers. Originally from Tucson, Arizona, Melinda moved 10 times by her senior year in high school as the daughter of an Air Force general. Challenges and advantages of this lifestyle led her to an ease with adapting to and appreciating new situations throughout her lifetime. Melinda's work experience started in the hospitality business with DoubleTree Inn in Tucson, where she served as a hostess, server, and catering manager for the operation, learning many valuable skills. After college graduation, she went on to operate a successful interior design business for 20 years in Scottsdale, Arizona, creating residential and commercial designs. That business took her all over the world, with her favorite project being a residential design opportunity in Manila, the Philippines. Fast forward to 1998, when she moved to the Northwest and was finally able to realize her dream of opening a restaurant. The Hardware Store restaurant opened in August of 2005. Creating a community gathering place, she and her 55 employees were able to successfully serve great food and service to all who patronized the restaurant, almost 15,000 customers a month. She retired and sold the restaurant in January of 2020. Melinda has a lifelong history of community service, and the most meaningful relationships she made on Vashon, she says, were with volunteers, with a common cause. We're hearing someone else's voice.
Oh, really?
Oops.
And before that, we had the Yellow Nimbus Part 2 featuring the Spanish Heart Band.
We're hearing other voices, folks. Can we? Ann Atwell, can you?
Is everyone muted? I mean, that should be muted.
All right, let's continue with Melinda's biography. Anyway, she was president of the Vashon Maury Chamber of Commerce. She's in a board chair and co-founder of the Vashon YMCA. She is a Paul Harris Fellow with the Rotary, a member of the Washington Restaurant Association. She was unofficial mayor of Vashon twice, a board member of Seeds for Success on Vashon Island to support jobs for disabled individuals, and many other volunteer positions with various organizations. Welcome, Melinda Powers.
Thank you. Good to be here.
That's certainly a good name for you. You are one powerful woman. Here you are with your siblings, and it looks to me like you're smack in the middle of 5. Is that correct?
It's yes. Well, I am. It's kind of hard to recognize me in that photograph, I know, but I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and pardon?
You're the oldest?
Mm-hmm. I'm the oldest of 5. So I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and it's just the greatest family. I mean, this family has always been my rock, and they still are.
Well, as the child of a career Air Force officer, you did move 10 times by the time you graduated from high school. What were the lifelong benefits that you got from that, and what were the downsides?
Well, there were a lot of benefits. I mean, for starters, my mom was so good at this. I mean, every place we moved, she put down roots immediately. She wouldn't even go to bed, even if it was for 36 hours, until she had unpacked everything. Every picture was hung, flowers were planted in the garden. And so whenever we would wake up the next morning, we felt like it was home. And so she was great at that. She was really organized. She was a hard worker, and she made it a fun experience for us. And when all was said and done, I'm really glad I did have those experiences. It taught me a lot. It taught me how to be flexible and adaptable, how to make friends, how to adjust. Every time we moved, it would be so sad because we would be sad to leave our friends and our school. But
Yeah.
without exception, every place we moved to ended up being our favorite place. So we kind of learned to trust that, after a while. And even though it would be sad to leave, we knew that something exciting was waiting for us.
Yeah. You've shown such a sense of community here on Vashon. Do you think your early travels had anything to do with that?
I think so. I mean, I think that, we always became involved in the communities in which we lived. And because we had a big family, we never fit into base housing. My dad was in the Air Force. And so we always lived in a community. Every time, every move, we lived in the community, not on the base.
Ah,
That was a really great experience. And we really got to learn the community that we were living in, and not just, other people who were in the service.
so that did come kind of naturally to you. I see you here. You were a cheerleader in Illinois. Is that you leaping in the air?
That is me leaping in the air. And boy, so that was in the late 1960s, the early 70s. And if you were a girl in high school and you were athletic and wanted to be part of a team, cheerleading was the only option.
Yeah.
So I went for it, and I was really excited. And actually, the first year I tried out, all my friends made it and I didn't. And it was devastating to me. I thought my life was over at 15. And eventually I got beyond that, and I thought, okay, I'm coming back next year. And I did, and I made it the next year. But it was such a good lesson in how to fail and be okay, how to fail successfully. And it's something that I've always taken forward throughout my life.
How to fail successfully. Do you remember how many different states you lived in and how you landed in Arizona?
Well, I lived in 16 different states, and the picture on the left, I was 5 years old, and that was 5 moves by the time we got to Hawaii, and Hawaii was not even a state at that point. And so, which was a long time ago, but the beauty of it is it didn't have all the tourists and hotels and all that. We actually lived the last 6 months on Waikiki Beach in a cottage. We pretty much had the place to ourselves. So it was just, all around just great experiences. But yes, 16 different states by the time I finished. And I was born in Arizona. I was born in Tucson, and immediately we left when I was a baby. And I ultimately came back there to go to college. So that's how I landed back in Arizona.
So it was your choice to go back there. It wasn't something that happened because of your dad's moving around.
No, I chose to go back.
Let's go to the next slide. So you got your first bachelor's degree in marketing while you were working in the hospitality industry.
Correct.
Which is kind of a portend for your future. But then you went on to earn a degree in interior design, which turned out to be a 20-year success story.
Yeah, that was interior design wasn't part of the original plan, but I kind of had a knack for it, and so I would like buy a house, fix it up, and sell it, move into it, and then sell it. And pretty soon people were saying, hey, could you come and do that at my house? So I would, and then shortly thereafter, I thought, well, gosh, I should start charging for this. And I started this little business in the second bedroom of my house, and ultimately kept growing and growing, and went back to school, and it became a great business. And so I moved out. I had employees at that point, and it was just an amazing 20-year experience, and every bit as hard as the restaurant business.
So who were your clients in Scottsdale, and did they range in socioeconomic status, or were they the big guys?
It was a little bit of everything, really. I had lots of clients who couldn't afford to do a lot. They wanted to do something creative, and that was a great challenge. And then I had some amazing clients, and I did a lot of commercial design too. And it's just like one thing led to another, and I didn't ever do any advertising. It was just all word of mouth. But yes, I had some amazing, wonderful clients.
I'm hearing some commonalities here between you and Betty, and that is sort of if you get a chance, take it. If it changes your life, let it. And you were
Exactly.
chances and respond when the opportunities arose. What did you enjoy most about interior design?
Well, I love the design process itself. I love that creative outlet, and I had some challenges. I mean, as I said, I didn't set out to do this. So for example, I can't draw very well, so I would sort of have to act out my design. I had a few challenges along the way in doing this, but I loved it so much and had some success at it, and so just kept at it. And the more I did it, the better I got at it.
Did you learn how to draw?
No, I'm to this day. I took classes, and my instructors would say, "Oh, don't worry, I can teach you." And then they'd come over and look and go, So no, I'm not a good drawer to this day.
So that's a lesson in how to get around your limitations.
Right.
Let's go to the next slide. Here you are with your blended family on Vashon Island, and this is how you got to Vashon. What year was that?
So that was 1998 that I first came to Vashon. And the reason I came is I fell in love with this family. And they're just the greatest joy to me, to this day. And I'll tell you, they are the greatest kids, and they believed in me. It was one of the reasons that I think I was able to stick with it and ultimately do the restaurant, is that they really did believe in me.
Who among these children did you bring with you from Arizona? Which ones?
So my son Scott on the right, he and I moved up from Arizona, and then had 4 stepkids, and then the 2 gals on the left in the front are spouses.
I see.
Yeah.
So what was your first impression of Vashon Island when you got here in 1998?
Well, I thought I'd just fallen into heaven. Honestly, I just couldn't believe a place like this even existed. It was so different from what I was used to. And I mean, I think the first thing you notice about Vashon is just the beauty and the quiet and the simplicity of life. And boy, I was just ready for that. So it wasn't a leap for me initially. I think it actually got a little harder as the reality of living on an island set in. But in the beginning, it was great. And one of the first gifts I ever received was actually from Bettie's little house. Somebody bought, Bettie, you had a poem that was called "If Once I Had Slept on," if once you've slept on an island. Do you remember that? And somebody bought that for me. And it was, "If once you've slept on an island, you'll never be quite the same." And it's so true. It changes you.
Let's go to the next slide, because you didn't let any grass grow under your feet here. Next slide. Yeah. So the hardware store was a real hardware store when you acquired it, right?
It was. Mm-hmm.
What were
It
some,
was. They were just closing it down, and it went on the market. They were trying to sell the building, and honestly, at first everybody was saying, what's going to become of that? It's about 5,000 square feet, so it was a big building for Vashon. It's like, what in the heck could ever go there? And literally, I had one of those aha moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, my restaurant. And at that point in time, and that was 2003, there were very few restaurants on Vashon. Sound Food had closed, the Spinnaker had closed. So there were just a handful of places. And I just thought, oh, this is what Vashon needs, and this is my lifelong dream. And so I went for it.
so what were some of your challenges when you first bought the store?
I don't even think we have time to go through all the challenges. There were so many challenges. I mean, to start with, I couldn't afford to buy it. So I met with the Barentines who owned it, and I laid out my vision for a restaurant and a community gathering place. And I said, the only thing is I can't afford it, but I could rent it. But hey, I can only pay $1,000 a month to start. And I thought, I was embarrassed to even say that. And I thought they were going to kick me out. And instead, they reached across the table and shook my hand and said, you've got a deal. And the next day, they got a full price cash offer of $650,000, and they turned it down. So that was my first little miracle in this journey. And that was an important one for me because I really felt like it was meant to be, that this was happening. So
Wow.
I was excited about that. And then like the next day, reality hit. And all the problems that I was about to face presented themselves. So that was the start of solving problems, which took me 2 years to solve until I could eventually open the restaurant.
Right, and I remember that it was this store-ish for 2 years.
Mhm.
But it did become a gathering place. Did you, even before it was a restaurant, did you intend for that to happen, or was that another one of those serendipitous things?
Oh no, I definitely intended for that. So I had a really strong context around opening the restaurant that I wanted to create a gathering place on Vashon, because at that point in time, we really didn't have many. It was mostly like the grocery store and the post office were our gathering places. And so I was very intentional about creating a gathering place. So I just basically opened it up to everybody. Anybody who needed a space for anything could come in. I didn't charge them for the most part. They could just use the space. And so we had everything from the Boy Scouts to school programs to weddings and birthdays and fundraisers and all kinds of things. And in fact, one of the first fundraisers we had was for the Vashon Community Care Center. And I don't know if you remember, but that was the very first auction that the hardware store ever did for the Community Care Center. And we went on to do 15 more after that, but that happened before it was a restaurant. And then I created the stores just because I had to have some income. So
Well, yeah, it was that store that basically kept the lights on
right.
until you become a restaurant. Let's go to the next slide. Look at that. What a project that was. I look at that and I'm terrified. So what was it that appealed to you about owning a restaurant? That's not a simple thing to do.
That was a 30-year dream for me. Ever since I was in the hospitality business, I loved it so much. And over the years, I had thick files full of ideas and menus. And I mean, even through all of my interior design days, I just knew one day I would still be able to do a restaurant.
That's an incredible sense of self and incredible vision. How long did that remodel take from start to finish?
Well, the remodel itself, I think we did it in like 4 months. We were completely ready. I had I had 2 years to put this in place. So I had the store for 2 years. And then we finally got our permit and we started taking apart the hardware store. So we wanted to save all the old wood, and you can see it. We cataloged it and we saved it, and then we reused it when we put it back together. So, but yeah, the remodel itself was about 4 months.
That's incredible. So what challenges did you bump up against in that process?
Once we were able to get our permit, we really didn't have too many challenges. It went pretty smoothly from that point on. And we had all island people working on construction for it. And yeah, there were little blips along the way, but for the most part, it came together pretty well.
Let's go to the next slide. And here it is, the dream come true. Tell us about your management philosophy, because you had remarkably low turnover for a restaurant among your employees. How did you select, train, and keep your staff? They all look pretty happy there.
Well, that was the most challenging part of the whole thing, was finding employees. And on Vashon, it's tough. And I mean, we needed 50 employees to make this work. And so we, of course, advertised for employees. At one point, I was so desperate for kitchen employees that my chef and I sat on the front porch, and everyone who walked by, we asked if they had knife skills. And one kid came by and he goes, "Well, I can fillet fish." And I said, "Great, you're hired." And he worked for us. So it was really tough filling those positions, but we did. And my main philosophy was really to create a very functional climate in the restaurant. So a lot of restaurants are dysfunctional, and I just wasn't going to have that. So I really did draw on family values, and I wanted to bring that to our employees. So I wanted the hardware store to be their rock, that no matter what was happening in their life, they could come to work and they would know that they were loved and they had support. And yes, they still had to work hard, but we were there for them.
How did you do that and maintain a very busy 15,000 customers per month restaurant?
You know, it was maybe more natural than it seems. You know, it was just who I was, and I think it appealed to people that they wanted that a secure place to work, and they wanted it to feel like a family. The picture on the right was we all got dressed up because that was another Vashon Community Care auction actually that night. I think that was the one when Katie Lang came and sang at the hardware store.
Big one.
And so we just would get so excited. Everybody would get dressed up, and we had lots of little events like that where we would all come together and just have fun.
Well, and that gathering place aesthetic really stuck with the restaurant even after it was a restaurant and no longer a store. It seemed like an upscale neighborhood bar, even to the visitors. So how did your work with employees and your attitude nurture that atmosphere?
Well, so right before I started the restaurant, I read a book called The Great Good Place. And it talks about the value of gathering places in a community, and that a community cannot be healthy unless it has great gathering places. So I shared that philosophy with everybody, and everyone embraced that. It gave them like a greater sense of purpose in coming to work. We weren't just coming to punch a time clock for a paycheck. We were coming to make a difference in our community. And that resonated with people. That made it a lot more fun and meaningful to come to work. In fact, I had one employee who moved away, and she ultimately came back and she said, "I worked in a restaurant and all they cared about was making money. You know, they didn't care about anything else." And she said that just didn't work, you know, for her. So I think that our employees really embraced it, and so did our customers. I would walk by a table and I'd hear people say, "Well, her vision was to create this gathering place." I'm like, all right, you know, if our customers and our employees know it, it's going to happen.
Let's go to the next slide and get a taste of that. Can you just tell us about these photos? What are each of these? What is
Those
each?
are all just fun special events that happen every year on Vashon, and the hardware store being front and center. We got into it big time. So of course, Strawberry Festival, we always went all out. It was always our busiest day, our busiest weekend of the year. And we would be so excited about it. And then the picture on the bottom is Halloween. And we would, again, go all out. We would start planning our Halloween costumes the year before. And our customers loved it. Our customers were dressed up. As most people know, Vashon, you don't trick or treat at people's houses, you trick or treat at their businesses. So we'd buy 3,000 pieces of candy and we would be ready to welcome customers, and oh, we'd be slammed all night long. It was so much fun. But all those events, we wanted to be front and center on that. We wanted to be a part of all that.
Well, and you sure have been. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. And there you are, where you were planted most of the time.
That photograph actually means a lot to me because, gosh, I spent thousands of hours in that spot, quarterbacking the restaurant and, expediting plates to go out to the diners, taking care of problems, inspiring, hopefully, employees to do their best. So much happened from that spot. And so I spent many hours rooted in that general area.
Yeah, and I'm confident that had so much to do with the success of your restaurant. It's really hard work. And your head for business was well known and most appreciated among island business owners. In fact, they elected you chamber president. You continued in several other volunteer positions. How did you do all that?
I don't know. I think you just do it. I mean, Bettie was the same way. It was fun. It was fun. It wasn't, yes, it was hard work and you had to be organized and you had to be purposeful about it, but it was great. It was what I wanted to do.
And so you were elected unofficial mayor in 2005. How did you feel about that?
Well, it was all for fun, but I kind of took it seriously. I developed a relationship with Dal Constantine, who was on the King County Council at that point, and we did lots of little fun things. And I mean, it was a lighthearted race, obviously, but I loved doing it, and yeah, it was just fun. I really embraced it.
So that was 16 years ago. What stands out for you most in those ensuing 15 years when the restaurant was humming along and thriving? Did you ever get bored?
No, never. I never got bored. Every single day was different and something new, something great, something challenging. I mean, every day brought that. So yeah, it was amazingly, no, I never got bored and I never really was that tired. It was a lot of hours and a lot of hard work, but I was used to that. So I liked it. I liked that part of it.
So now you've retired. What's next for Melinda Powers?
I don't know yet. I'm waiting to see what's next for me. I think that there is something next, but I've really enjoyed just taking this time off. And, we were sort of forced into that with COVID. Right. And obviously the timing was amazing for me. When I sold the restaurant and retired, I had no idea. No one had any idea what was coming. And so that was pretty amazing timing. And I was grateful for that. But that year of sort of a down year for everybody actually was good for me in terms of just being quiet and reflective and sort of enjoying what had happened previously in my life.
Serendipity has followed you, it looks like, for the most of your life. Melinda Powers, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for all you've done to shape today's Vashon Island. What important moment in your time here have we overlooked? Anything?
Oh, I don't think so. I think you've pretty much covered it.
All right, so now we're going to open this up to the audience. After listening to these two exceptional women, I'm sure you audience members have tons of questions, and I'd like to open with one. That is, what do you see as the future of Vashon Island, both commercially and atmospherically? Either one of you. Melinda?
Well, I think that Vashon has changed quite a bit, just really in the last 3 years. We've seen a lot of restaurants open on Vashon. We've seen businesses change. We've seen younger people moving to the island, families moving to the island. So for the first time, I'm really seeing a lot of interesting changes on Vashon.
And Bettie?
Yes, it's changed. And I think we just have to remember all those things. I think that it's like, what do I want to say? It's like none of us were originals. I mean, there are a few still left that are original families, but none of us were originals. We all brought new ideas, and I think new people will bring new ideas, and we have to accept those changes and live with them. And we just have to remember the old logo for a long time was the heart of the sound. And I think that's what we have to remember. It's the heart that brings us here, and it's a heart that keeps us here. And we just have to keep that teamwork going. And I feel that's what the new generation is coming. I think it's a lovely place to live, always has been and always will be. We're blessed.
And I am grateful to the two of you and to you folks in the audience for allowing me to moderate and talk with these women. You've been asking lots of questions. Ann Atwell and Elsa Kroonquist are going to direct those questions that you in the audience have submitted through the chat room. Elsa, Ann, please take it away.
Thank you both so very much. We do have some good questions here. And of course, one is the classic for both of you. What advice do you both have for new business owners just starting on the island? How has the island changed since you started your business?
Well, I have had a lot of people come and, say, oh, can you, I'm starting a new business, or I'm struggling in my business, can you help me? And people will say, I don't know what else to do. I've put my heart and soul into it. And I tell them, oh, it takes a lot more than heart and soul. It's so much bigger than that. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And then I start talking about trusting yourself, managing fear is huge. There's just so many things, being flexible, being consistent. Those are things, trusting yourself. Trust is like your insurance policy. So, it takes so much more than most people think. It's not just hard work and heart and soul. It takes managing a lot of things. And that's when the little miracles start to happen and you start to move forward, is when you've got that whole package.
Thank you. Bettie?
Well, I'm going to kind of agree with it. I think that, I think in any case, you have to remember that it takes more than one person. You've got to have a base team. You can't make all the decisions yourself. You need to listen to the customer, to the person that you're working with. I think that's really, really, really important. And you need to remember not to step on toes. I think that's very important. It's just because it's your idea, it's not your way. And to remember, again, it's got to come from the heart. You got to answer the phone with a smile. You've got to have a smile on your face. You've got to be tolerant, and you got to listen. And I think all the new business owners are doing that. I think they're working as a team. In some ways, I see, gone through where there was team and no team and team and no team. Believe me, in 38 years in the industry there, you see it all. And right now, it seems to me that they're working well together. And just remember, there's no such thing as an original recipe. Some people want a little more salt in it. Some people want a little more pepper in it. And so you kind of got to adjust your program that same way. Just remember, you got to work around everybody, and you can't listen to everybody to have them confuse you. You've got to stay on point, but you do have to listen. You have to listen.
Thank you, Betty.
So there are several questions for both of you. Another one here is, what was the process in deciding to retire? And then what a legacy for both of you? Betty, maybe you can start that one this time.
Well, that's kind of an interesting one because there were several things that led up to it. I could see the changes. I mean, I had given it my all. I loved it. I could see the changes in computers. Not my thing. I'm not an electronic person, as you well know. I could see the kids walking into the store, one going one way, one going the other way, both on telephones talking to each other. That wasn't what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the kids out fighting to get the big shipment box so they could make a school bus or a ferry boat out of it or something like that. So I could feel the change of the generation. And I could feel that maybe I wasn't right in that generation, and it was time for new younger blood to listen and to create that position. So I think that was a lot of it. That really was what triggered me, was just seeing the changes and what was happening, not just but basically in the youth. Basically, it was the youth, and the other thing was, I was like a teacher, and I at one point had always thought I wanted to be a first grade teacher or a third grade teacher. But I think it's that with that philosophy, I wanted to go out. Well, I was a good teacher, as Mrs. Froning would say. I want to be on top of it, and I wanted to be on top of what I was doing. And I felt like I went out with a good class behind me. We did potty train a lot of kids.
How about you, Melinda?
Well, no one is more surprised that I retired than I am. I really felt like I would do this until I was in my 90s. I mean, I just didn't see that coming. But I think what happened for me is, and the same thing happened with my interior design company after 20 some years, is that I started feeling like I wanted to move on to something else. And so I was trusting that intuition. And I kind of lived with it for a year, and it still was very strong in me that it was time for me to make a change. And so I took the step, and it's not easy to sell a restaurant, and everything did come together really easily. And so I felt like it was the right thing, and that I was moving in the right direction. But I'm really quite surprised that I am retired. But I feel like it is the right thing. And I just listened to my intuition on that.
Thank you.
Here's a question for you, Melinda. Is your favorite bar stool B22?
Thanks, Chris, for that question. I know exactly. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Chris was always such a great customer, and he loved that one bar stool. So we would give everybody the evil eye if they sat in it before he got there. But yes, definitely my favorite.
Oh, okay. That was Chris's favorite bar stool, I guess.
Let's see. I have one here for Betty. I think, Betty, you answered this. What year did you buy the little house?
1976.
1976, right.
We opened the Malt Shop the year St. Helens blew.
And Pam is asking, what about the fish market? Splash, question mark. It was in the same place as the Malt Shop.
Right. So, I'm so struck through this whole thing, how many similarities Betty and I have. So that was the Malt Shop, and I bought it from Tom and created a fish market and a small restaurant. And so that must have been 2008, maybe. That was an interesting venture that didn't work. And talk about learning from, failures. But it was great. I opened it in the summer, and it was great, and it was successful at that point. But in the winter, it didn't work at all. So, but that you know, I'm glad I did it. I always wanted to have a fish market. I felt like an island needed to have a great fish market, and we didn't have one. And so I was committed to do that. But the one lesson that I learned from that is I just felt like, oh, I know how to do this. I did the hardware store. I can do this. But a fish market is a completely different business than a restaurant. And so I learned a lot from that to be careful what I jump into. And I think I did jump into that a little too fast.
Mhm. Lessons learned.
Lessons learned. Well, I don't see other questions, but there are some lovely comments for Betty that I'm going to pass on from Mallory Dorman. What I would do for some sour cherries and lemon drops from the Little House right now. And from Molly Crosby, Betty 1000% taught me how to tie a bow.
Bless you, Molly, bless you. And Dorman, same thing, Mallory. You know, there are 1,000, we did create 1,000 memories. And, you know, that's the good part. And it's nice to have them respond to those type of things and feel that, because for the retirement party that was thrown as a surprise party last week, somebody still had the little red bag and it had Jelly Bellies in it. And wow, that to me was one of the biggest compliments I could get. And the note read, they're the kid flavors because you're always a kid at heart.
Mm.
You know, those are nice. It's nice to have them touch base that way. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. Thank you also, Susan, for being an excellent moderator, and Betty and Melinda. We don't have any more questions, and it's 20 minutes after the hour, so thank you for staying even longer. This was just a wonderful evening, and I don't know where you went. Oh, there we go. I'm going to say it's time to say good night. Thank you and good night.